Have you ever looked at a painting and thought, wait, is that real? Well, that's exactly the vibe we're going for this tutorial. We're diving into how to create the realistic, juicy plum with just some watercolor magic and few tricks for those bloom textures and highlights on the skin. Think painting something this beautiful is complicated? Trust me, I'll guide you through the whole process with only a few simple steps. Let's get started. If you're new here, I'm Windy, a self-taught artist. In this channel, I share tips, techniques, and inspiration I've picked up along my journey. My goal is to help you to grow as an artist and create in your own unique way, no matter where you're starting from. So join me to learn new skills and let's grow together.
Start with a light pencil sketch of the plum. Here's a small tip. Mark 4 dots on each side of the plum, then connect those dots to shape a simple oval for the body, slightly tapering at one end to give it a natural form. Add a small stem at the top and a leaf extending from the stem for balance and visual interest. You can also mark where the shadows will be to help with the coloring process later. Keep your lines soft and light. These are just guidelines for your painting. Focus on proportions and shapes rather than details at this stage. Now we will create the base wash using the wet on wet technique. Begin by wetting the entire plum area except for the leaf with clean water. The amount of water here is quite important. Make sure the plum is covered with a thin layer of clean water. If you see puddles on the paper, it means you've applied too much water. Simply dab it with a napkin if that happens. Mix a light sky blue tone and apply it to the wet surface, avoiding the shadow areas, and let it blend naturally. Then mix some blue and red tone to create a purple tone that you like for the darker shades. The trick is to ensure your brush doesn't contain too much water, otherwise the darker shades you add will bleed excessively and create stains after drying. Now while the paper is still damp, add a bit more pigments to the edges and darker areas for a gradual gradient effect. Be sure to leave a small highlight area to represent light reflecting off the plum's surface. Let the colors flow and blend naturally. This is part of the charm of watercolor. Once the base wash is semi-dry, start building up the layers. Use darker tones like deep violet, red, and a hint of indigo. Apply this in areas where the plum naturally curves to create depth and shadow. Use brush strokes to paint irregular streaks and shapes that mimic the natural texture of the plum's skin. Take your time with this step as it is key to gradually building dimension and richness in color. Once the paper is dry, use a dry brush technique to add tiny textures to the skin. First, clean and dry your brush with a napkin, then take a small amount of paint without adding too much water. Press the paintbrush down on the palette to create a flat head. Use this dry, flat head to gently paint the texture with ease. The bloom texture is essentially the waxy coating on the plum. Now it's time to add this unique bloom texture to make the plum look realistic. Start by mixing a diluted white gouache with a hint of sky blue and use a fine tip brush to add small streaks, spots, and irregular patterns to the plum's skin. These marks should be soft and subtle, blending into the layer beneath. If they appear too harsh, you can soften them further with a damp brush. This step is key to make the plum look lifelike and 3D. Now let's move on to the leaf. Take a yellow-green mixture of your choice and apply it around the center of the leaf. While the paper is still wet, add a green tone mixture around the edges and let the color connect and blend naturally to create the base. Here's a small tip. Make sure your brush contains equal amounts of water when blending two colors together, so the colors connect smoothly, otherwise stains may form after drying. Next, add a darker green tone to the shadow areas. Then mix a black-brown tone for the darkest shades and apply it to the bottom area of the stem to create depth and make it stand out. Once the leaf is nearly dry, you can add another layer to strengthen the darker shades. Paint fine veins on the leaf using a mix of green, yellow, and white gouache, and add tiny details to the stem for a realistic touch. For the final touches, mix a thicker white gouache for the brightest highlights. Use a small brush to add highlights to area where the light directly hits the plum, such as along the curves and edges. These small adjustments will bring your painting to life and give it a polished finished look.
And there you have it, a vibrant, realistic watercolor plum. We use layering, texturing, and gouache highlights to create a lifelike result. I hope this tutorial inspires you to explore these techniques and try painting more fruits. If you enjoyed this video, you might be interested in my other videos on watercolor techniques to take your art to the next level. Thank you so much for watching and happy painting!